Welcome to Stream Detroit, the show about cool people doing cool shit. I'm your host, Mike McClintock. We're here with Brad Fox down at Grand Circus in the big room that we normally aren't in. So when you hear the water rushing through the pipes, don't worry about it. We're here with Jamie Began, from the founder and CEO of Right Brain Networks. How you doing?
Doing pretty well.
Thanks for coming all the way down from Ann Arbor on this little soggy Detroit evening. Tell us a little bit about Right Brain. What are you guys doing down there in Ann Arbor now?
Sure. We're basically a cloud computing consulting company or engineering company. Mm-hmm. And what we help other companies kind of move to the cloud. Generally, we're working with software companies that actually have a large investment in say their applications or a product that they're actually building from scratch to learn in the cloud. And we basically cloud enable these custom or bespoke written applications.
Okay. So like you like Amazon Web Services, AWS?
Yep. We're primarily working with AWS or Amazon Web Services, which is much a lot of people surprised that Amazon, the same bookstore company, is kind of the biggest player in the cloud computing space.
Yep.
And that's what we do is we help people kind of move their workloads from their traditional physical or virtual servers onto Amazon's cloud.
Okay. So you're doing, I guess you'd call that DevOps. We hear a lot of these words like DevOps and cloud and application development for the cloud. A lot of people say cloud. I think you ask 10 people what cloud means, you get 10 different definitions. Give us the definitive.
The definitive.
Yeah. We're going to anoint you right now.
Yeah, big data. We're going to ask you what big data is next.
Exactly. This is a big moment in internet history. What does cloud mean?
I mean, the cloud is somebody else's equipment, essentially.
Okay.
Equipment that you don't own, broadly speaking. In this case, Amazon owns all these computers, and you're renting them per hour. Mm-hmm. So if you need 100 servers for 2 days or 2 hours, you can buy 100 servers and shut them down. You're not charged, which is really the huge benefit for our customers who are, Intuit. People make TurboTax and QuickBooks and stuff like that is one of our largest clients. And they have an extreme need for a lot of processing power come tax time, but maybe this time of year they don't, so they can scale up and scale down. That's kind of the benefit of cloud.
So you handle not only the infrastructure part of that, the scaling up, the scale down, the elasticity of that. Do you do application development for them, or you just support their application development?
Yeah, you already kind of hit on kind of our areas of specialty. You mentioned DevOps a little bit earlier. DevOps and cloud are kind of the two sides of the same coin. DevOps is kind of the process that enables movement to the cloud, and the cloud is kind of the infrastructure that resides on. You can do DevOps without cloud and cloud without DevOps, but it's kind of silly to do that. But yeah, a large part of moving to the cloud is application re-architecture. Or if you're building a brand new application from the start, you kind of have to understand how cloud's different to take full advantage of it. So yes, we do have software engineers and kind of your traditional IT operations engineers. Okay.
So how is it a little bit different? How do you re-architect an app from, say, the old model of like client server where it's all behind, it's on your network, in your firewall, physical presence of hardware, stuff like that. How do you re-architect the apps so that it works in the cloud? What's different?
Sure. So I'll give you kind of going back to the Intuit example before. Previously they would sell TurboTax. You go to Best Buy once a year and you buy the CD-ROM, install it in your software or in your computer, and you'd be responsible for making it work, and you didn't have to worry about if your data was interfering with somebody else's. When you kind of move that all to the cloud and everybody's computers everybody's data is kind of intermixed, that introduces possibilities of data breach. So security becomes much more important. Scalability. Suddenly when you've got a rush of thousands or millions of people using your software, you have to scale up. Exactly. So there's just some unique challenges. Multi-tenancy when you're talking about databases and scalability and security. Those become very much more real problems when you're moving to cloud, and it just requires a bit of expertise in being able to do that effectively.
So ultimately, what are if you're a company, certainly it's a lot more complex than all of us probably have our own Dropbox accounts and Box, but it's similar in a different scale though, right? So instead of a consumer just moving a bunch of stuff to a cloud service like Dropbox, orders of magnitude more complex. So how do you guys think about that aspect? How do you kind of break that down? So if you're breaking it down from a consumer like me, how do you guys scale? That's a massive task, I would imagine, going from moving somebody like that, having your clients trust you enough to say, okay, we got to move from old world to kind of new world. What does that process look like for you guys?
Sure. Well, the biggest thing is when you have these moving pieces. Let's say that I don't know, you're launching a brand new movie and it's premiere night, and for some reason you have a website that's supporting that. Perhaps you're selling some sort of downloadable content. You might need 100 servers to actually be able to serve that, and then a week later you might only need 4. Maybe in the next hour you only need 4. So you've got these computers that are constantly turning on and turning off, and your application has to be built to support that. So when a brand new server comes on, it has to know how to configure itself and kind of join the pod, so to speak. And when your application no longer needs that load and things start kind of turning off, your application has to be able to sustain. Your application has to be able to adapt to that manner. So meaning, most computers, or most applications, if you turn off a computer, the application breaks. In this instance, you actually have to account for that.
So the cloud, so it's a lot of hardware. What happened to all the old hardware that people were like these big giant server farms or whatever they had? Like, I remember I grew up in the ad agency world. We had this one room, it was like the server room, and it had like an elevated floor and all these pipes. What happened to that stuff? I mean, what are the drivers? I mean, other than
it's going away. And I kind of relate it back to 100 years ago. Every factory in Detroit had their own on-premises power plant, their own electrical generators. And every day everybody would show up. You'd have the linemen, the dynamo tenders, the guy who basically ran the thing, and your electrician is just making sure that the electricity came on. And then we actually invented an efficient distribution medium, alternating current and a few other technologies around that. So we could centralize electrical generation and distribute it to people who need it. We get the economies of scale. It's the exact same thing that's happening now. We're centralizing computer operations, and we've got this high-speed internet, which is our distribution medium. So what you're going to eventually see is people just kind of plug into the wall, and you're going to have your entire compute and your storage right there in the wall. And we really aren't that far from a consumer standpoint today with, as you mentioned, Dropbox and everybody's mobile devices. Mm-hmm. Enterprise is a much more complicated system, so it's going to take longer to get there, but we will eventually get there.
Our enterprises right now, are they looking at 10-year horizons? I mean, do they have big plans now to say we got to get rid of these boxes and move it all onto AWS or Rackspace or whatever?
Right. So most large companies have a hardware refresh cycle. Uh-huh. Generally, they aren't buying equipment; they're leasing it. So they're on lease terms. So generally, about 4 years out, they're doing a hardware refresh. So we're seeing a lot of companies that are taking that money, what they would normally be going out there and leasing new equipment, and actually putting that budget into rebuilding their applications to be more cloud compatible, and then just moving that workload to the cloud.
Is that like that's a big trend right now? Like a tsunami of...
Yeah, they tend to call it Cloud First Initiative. It's kind of the board level speak for that type of initiative. Yes.
Okay. So let's back up a little bit. That's what you're doing now. Mm-hmm. 5 years ago, I mean, did anybody even know what this was? I mean, unless you were like a Y Combinator company, you probably really most enterprises really didn't understand what AWS was. How do you get started in something like that in such an industry that's basically, I mean, the last 4 or 5 years, it's really become something. How do you get started in that?
So I've actually been using AWS since 06, which is when the beta existed. This was before you had this nice console where you can launch computers. You actually had to do everything via Java SDK. Mm-hmm. So it was very, very cumbersome, and there was no persistent storage and actually store data on the individual computers themselves. So it's come a long way in just a short period of time. I believe Amazon's releasing like 200 new features per year, and that rate's only increasing. So they've got about 80 different services now that comprise Amazon Web Services. So it's kind of matured quite a bit to the point where enterprises are now finding the tooling that they need to actually do their kind of customized workload, mainly around security and compliance, that type of thing, which is more important to larger businesses. Mm-hmm. How did you get started with it? I mean, you're right. It really got started in kind of the Y Combinators and the incubators, other incubators and startups. Basically, guys who couldn't afford to buy the equipment. So therefore, they had to pay per hour because they didn't know whether the startup was going to work or not. It didn't make much sense to invest $500,000 in equipment. But as they've kind of proven the market and proven the model, a lot of these other companies are having to adapt to that. So again, I'm going back to Intuit, but there's a lot of companies out there that are kind of nipping it into its heels. A lot of these startup software companies that are trying to do tax and stuff like that. Intuit has to move to the cloud model because they've got to be able to innovate quickly. If they're having to release CDs once a year, that's not enough rate of innovation. Right. People have to be innovating and releasing monthly, in some cases daily. And it injects much more agility into these larger companies who are being run over by a bunch of these smaller, less capitalized companies just because they can't afford to keep up.
Right. Yeah, because you don't need a $500,000 Sun box to run your startup like you did in 1994.
Right.
you can be, you know, heck, the free tier on there is.
Yeah, you get one buy.
Well, it's free,
yeah,
and move it up incrementally and build that into your model so that you just, you know, it doesn't. It's a function of paying customers how many servers you have to turn on.
Right, and let's say you blow up overnight. Even if you had $500,000, how long is it going to take you to get this stuff ordered, provisioned, rack stacked?
Right.
Here you do it in a matter of hours.
Right, exactly. So you're bootstrapped. You know, did you start as a consultant and then build your consultancy up? Did you start out and say, I'm going to build this big agency?
No, we didn't start off as a cloud practice. We've only been doing that for about 3 years now. Really, this came out of necessity. I was actually working as an IT manager for a microchip engineering company. I actually started here in Detroit when we actually moved to Ann Arbor, and then I was laid off in October 2008. And oddly enough, the same week I was laid off, I bought a house and got married. So
that's perfect.
It was pretty eventful.
Good things come in threes?
For sure. So,
case of vodka.
That's four. That's more things.
There was certainly a lot of that too. And if you recall, October 2008 was not a good time to be unemployed in Michigan. So I was very much in good company. You know, like a lot.
That kind of sucks.
Yeah,
that's a downer.
Yeah, you buy this beautiful house and you sit in here knowing you can't afford it and watch the seasons go by.
Right.
It was the most difficult period in my life.
Right.
And it accounts for a large part of where I'm at today.
Okay.
You know, just the tenacity to stick with it. You know, those were kind of the dark times. I don't really want to go back to that. But, you know, I looked for work for going on 6 months and went on plenty of interviews and, you know, even, you know, second and third interviews. Sent out over 100 resumes, still couldn't find anything. And, you know, one day I just kind of woke up.
Resumes and no nibbles?
Well, I got a few nibbles, just nobody that wanted to reel me in, I guess, so to speak. And I didn't understand why that was happening. You know, perhaps I wasn't interviewing.
So you were typically used to having a job.
Oh, yeah.
At that point, and then, you know, the bottom falls out. Right. And you're like, all right, now what? I'm out of vodka. Now what am I going to do? Is this your entrepreneurial journey at this point?
Pretty much.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I mentioned that I'd just gotten married, and you know, that was a pretty rough time to go through a new marriage. Yeah. But luckily, you know, I have a wonderful wife who supported me and, you know, encouraged me to keep going. So that's a large part of why I was able to do that.
Right.
But yeah, I woke up one day and
I'm
not sending in another resume. Just ain't not going to happen. Something snapped to me. I'm like, I'm not going to try to tell people why I should be allowed to make them money.
Right.
So I knew I had a valuable skill set. So you know what? Forget it.
You literally woke up one day and said, "Damn it."
Yep. Yeah, I actually
doing it this way.
I'm not working for the man.
Yeah. I remember sitting down at my computer. It's like, all right, let's go find some more job listings. Like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. I'm like, I just can't. I can't handle it anymore. It was like sending out resumes into the abyss and never hearing back.
Right.
You know? So that's why it's really important to me when we bring people in for an interviews at Right Parade. If we choose that they're not a good fit for them, that they actually get an acknowledgement, a personal acknowledgement to say, you know, hey, we appreciate you. You're a good person. Here's some of the things that we really liked about you. We found another good candidate. I mean, if people had just done that for me, I probably would have never kind of ended up where I was emotionally. So I try. If you look at some of our videos on our website, one of the lines that I say in there that's really important to me is that I built the company that I wanted to work in. And that's what I continue to do, and that's what keeps me going. But, you know, back then I didn't have a company, so, you know, it was just basically me deciding to do freelancing. My background's kind of unique, or at least different. Yeah. Where I've done both systems engineering, you know, firewall, you know, OS type stuff, and I'm a fairly decent software developer. So that's kind of unusual. And so I was doing kind of freelance web development work, and I was actually, you know, fixing Exchange server and installing servers and stuff like that for small businesses. But as the company kind of grew, I had to make a decision. Which company did I want to build? Because they're very different business models. Right. Decided to like to build stuff, so I actually started doing more web development, software engineering, and I started hiring software engineers. You know, a software development company is a very undifferentiated. It's a very difficult business to be in, especially as a solo practitioner. Yep. You're competing against guys in India working for $9 an hour. We kind of struggled through that. I was getting whatever work I could get off of Craigslist and tapping my own network. And
this is when you're still like basically freelancing, right? Before you started hiring people.
Yeah, this is about the first 6 months or so.
How long did it take you to say, screw this Odesk thing?
Not that long ago, to be honest with you.
What's an Odesk?
It's like an Elance type thing where it's an online marketing place where employers post jobs or gigs or whatever, and then you bid on. It's almost like a reverse.
People come and bid $9 an hour.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Not to discourage. I mean, we used Elance. Odesk, we found it kind of be a cesspit. To be honest with you, Elance was much better, though it was much harder to do. But Elance is difficult. Any of those type of markets are very difficult, but it really allowed me to sharpen my sales skills, which is very important. It helped us through some difficult periods. So I got no problems with them. But we started hiring. I hired my first person about 6 months in.
A developer or?
Well, my very first person was actually a part-time office manager.
Okay.
A great woman, but then her husband was laid off, not surprisingly. And at that time, I couldn't afford health insurance for her. So I actually got her a job working for one of my clients at the time, and she's still there, so that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, software development firm, I was still doing a little bit of kind of work on the side, part of the company doing our network support. And then we kind of just grew a little bit, still kind of hard to get work. Like I mentioned, it's a very competitive industry.
This is like 08, 09. Well, this is like 09 now. Right?
Yeah, this would be at the end of 09, probably to middle about 2010 or so.
So it's you and like a couple other guys?
Just one other guy at that point.
Okay. Were you doing like fixed base stuff, big projects? Were you doing hourly? Were you billing
straight hourly?
Straight hourly?
Yeah, and that was a difficult, because a big project.
That's got to be difficult, right?
Yeah, I mean, a big project for us at that time was like $2,000 or $3,000. And, that doesn't keep even one software developer employed for very long. So it was constantly worrying about making payroll. To this day, I've yet to be later missed payroll, so it's almost by the grace of God. So there have been some lean times. But, hiring more, then we got a couple bigger jobs and hired a few more people. And then really our growth didn't really occur until about last year. Up until about February, March of last year, we were still only 4 people.
Okay.
And, I mentioned that I just hired 4 people in the past 2 weeks, so that puts us at 15.
Wow. So you went from 4 to 15 in the last year?
Yep.
Wow. That's got to be like crazy.
Yeah. I mean, my payroll right now every 2 weeks is almost double what I made the entire first year in business.
Right.
So, and,
so are you all physically in the same location, or are you doing like the virtual thing? Or no?
Nope. Everybody's working on the same office in Ann Arbor. And that's one thing that I'm somewhat inflexible about, just because the industry is just growing so quickly. Like I can't put some guy off site or hire somebody and afford to have that knowledge all contained in his head. Because the type of engineers I'm trying to hire don't really exist here.
Yeah.
We invest heavily in on-the-job training, and it's very difficult to do that when people are in kind of dissimilar locations.
Right. So you use like Scrum, and you got to do your daily stand-up, and then it all works. Okay. So you got Agile development, Agile DevOps, and how are you able to? If you're dealing with like a Toyota or something or some big company, do they understand what Agile DevOps is now versus like 3 or 4 years ago? They were probably like, "What?" Huh?
Well, it's kind of funny you mentioned Toyota.
How do you sell that?
Because that's what Toyota hired us to do, to modernize their software development process for the research group here in Ann Arbor. So they're doing some pretty interesting work, but they needed to move faster, like a lot of large companies. So we kind of suggested ways in which they could develop faster, and a large part of that is deploying code as well.
Didn't they invent Kanban anyways or something like that?
Yeah, the Toyota production system. Kanban.
So maybe that was perhaps the single worst example I could have pulled out of my butt. But like if another big company, do they really understand what that means, or do they even care? They're
going to have to care if they don't.
If they're doing waterfall now and they've got like all these bodies in a cubicle farm and stuff, how do they transition from that model to something where they can get on a faster release cycle, maybe doing continuous development? Because it's not like they're going to retrain all these people in-house. Maybe they are, they're going to try to, but it's a different kind of breed of a person. So do they know that you can do that? And how do they understand that? That to me is like really interesting. It's like there's that big transition that's happening, but it's almost like people before they were like mobile. What are you talking about? People are going to do what with their phones? That's crazy talk. But now it's like they've got to go, like you said, be able to release monthly. You can't just release something every year. You've got to keep going and kind of function almost like an internal startup. How do they understand that now?
It really depends a lot on the company, and I think this is similar to mobile. It's pretty unusual to have somebody at the C-level kind of buy into that. Generally get like one internal champion. And they may not be the most powerful person there, but they tend to be the most vocal and harping away. And they might get somebody's ear that has a little bit of budget to bring us in, and then we can kind of consult. And we're not going to try changing the entire culture overnight. We're doing it on a per project basis. So we'll take this new initiative, the new exciting thing, and we'll apply some new and exciting ways of doing it. And then, we hopefully will help them kind of integrate that in kind of their larger ecosystem there as far as development goes. But
and they still do this on hourly?
Yes, and the reason we do that is simply because many times we don't know what we're walking into.
Right.
This stuff is so new. Like, I could spend 3 months kind of investigating and making recommendations, or we can just dive in there and kind of prioritize things as they come along.
So do you do sprints?
Yes.
Okay. So they're basically buying a sprint.
Right.
Depending on how many people are in there. So they might be buying 3-man sprints, let's call them. And they understand that for the most part. Or you have to educate them on that. Do you ever get pushback for that? And
sometimes. And that's been some of the challenge with selling, is just that there's so much education that has to go into it. Because a lot of the people that we're selling against are like other Amazon partners that just have the Amazon logo on their line card because they have to, because everybody's asking for cloud. But we're different. We'll actually help people rebuild their applications, take full advantage of cloud. So that can be a very expensive proposition up front to actually do that. But then you're spending a lot less per month on kind of the reoccurring hosting costs because your application scales automatically.
And then you're also blessed with continuous deployment.
Exactly.
So do you wind up doing any kind of training where they're like, hey, we really like this methodology, and then they try to take what their internal waterfall process is maybe and try to move it towards that? Are you seeing that happen?
That's a huge part of the process, and it took me a long time to understand why so many people wanted training and why we were having so much difficulty selling some things. A lot of these software companies or software departments within companies are tasked with maintaining existing legacy software, or your IT guys are tasked with maintaining this legacy equipment. And they know that this cloud stuff exists. They're looking for any excuse they can to do new cool stuff. And here we come, an outside consulting agency saying, give us some money and we'll do the cool new stuff for you. And that doesn't go over so well.
Right, because they want to do that.
Exactly.
They see the writing on the wall.
Yeah,
they want to get out of waterfall and stop maintaining this sucky payroll app. And
for sure.
They want to stop repairing typewriters.
Right. Exactly. So that's kind of, we've adjusted our messaging to that. So, we're not interested in getting in there to take the credit. We want to make these guys look like the superheroes.
Okay.
Come in. So a large part of that is, we're not a magician, because a magician doesn't share secrets, what we do. So we'll get in and we'll train you guys how we do what we do. We're one of only 6 globally certified managed service providers for AWS. And
there's 6?
There's 6 of it globally, and we're the only one, and the smallest one on there.
So what's that mean? What's globally certified?
Well, there's only 6 companies worldwide that are certified to be a managed service provider in AWS.
Really?
And the reason we got that is because we underwent a third-party audit. So I flew out to Seattle and was grilled by 3 auditors across my table for almost 7 hours.
Okay.
But our processes and documentation, I had to show them how to do stuff. And we took that same guidelines that we actually had to adhere to and spent weeks kind of adjusting our processes to pass that. And we're training other organizations to kind of operate in the same manner.
Wow.
Sounds like an interrogation, but ultimately very worth it.
Yeah, so if you're one of 6 managed service providers, you get a lot of leads from Amazon themselves.
To some extent.
Probably it comes through. There's a kind of like MSDN or something, or TechNet with Microsoft, where they farm it out back out to the ISVs. Would you consider yourself an ISV now?
Not really. We work with more ISVs than we ought to consider myself that.
Okay.
Because we're not, with some exceptions, we're not really building our own product. We're helping other people build products.
So an independent software vendor is sourcing to you some of the development work for that, and then I guess they're basically selling it and doing the growth hacking kind of thing on it. And so you're the back office, you're the development staff for the modern day ISV. Right,
and we're not. So we'll build software applications for hire, I guess you could say. In some cases, in other cases, we'll just help people build stuff. Like rather than running code, we'll advise on architectural decisions, that type of stuff. But kind of in the ecosystem, you've got like VARs, which don't really exist so much more in cloud.
Right.
We're much more of like what they call an SI, or systems integrator, where we take other pieces and kind of put them together. And a lot of the customers are technically ISVs.
So you have to do like the hybrid kind of thing, where you're starting to build, this part of it in the cloud, and then you've got to connect it to some of the stuff that's still local. They've got some Oracle database.
Yep.
With,
there's a large part of that.
Rats running around inside of it.
Especially for larger companies. They're not going to take everything that they have, such
right.
a huge investment, and just drop it all in the cloud. So yeah, there has to be kind of a path
transition.
Right.
Is that called hybrid?
Yep.
Imagine that.
Everything's hybrids these days, right?
It's all the haptic high fives, hybrids. Right.
Exactly. Typewriter repair.
So what kind of people do you hire for that? Are you looking for, is it a programmer? Because there's not a lot of DevOps work or people around here. I mean, there's some. Mm-hmm. So how do you do that? What do you take? A person who's either understands command line stuff and maybe knows a little bit of programming, or do you take a programmer and teach them DevOps? Or?
They can go both ways. Most of the people on my staff tend to come from the IT operations world, mm-hmm. And they've kind of taught themselves programming languages.
Okay.
So they understand an application. They may have never been in a role where they're kind of part of a team that's developing against a particular spec. So they may be lacking some of the formalized training, but they understand how that stuff works. Mm-hmm. And that's super important when you're kind of in this DevOps world, because the big thing is the application matters. Back in the old IT world, it doesn't really matter. As long as I'm providing you these computers with this much CPU and an OS that functions, like the rest of it's up to you to kind of work with it. What we have to do is really understand how an application works. Where are its bottlenecks? Is it a database? Is it a network throughput? Mm-hmm. And that allows us to kind of build the architecture around those constraints. So it really does require kind of a specialized skill set, mm-hmm. though that's not something that I'm expecting a lot of people to come equipped to the company. So I'm looking for smart people that are super eager to learn new technology, that are kind of shown a bit of initiative and then running it on their own. And we're training them. We're training them mm-hmm. because they just, quite frankly, don't exist. Certainly not in Southeast Michigan.
Right. So how do you, like an ideal person, maybe they know Python or Ruby mm-hmm. or C# or something, and can find their way around a command line, but
it's generally somebody who's got some Linux background, that we're starting mm-hmm. to do more Windows as well. They understand how to automate some things via scripts or Bash or Python. Maybe understand some of the tools like Jenkins, which is a continuous integration server. Kind of have a few ideas of what's going on, and then we'll basically put them on a support role. So you join the company, and you're basically handling tickets and mm-hmm. learning how to fix broken things that are been built by the
software people. Never breaks. What do you mean?
Yeah. Exactly. I only wish that was the case. Mm-hmm. But yeah. And one of the ways we address this is by building in a lot of automation.
Okay.
And then then they eventually graduate where they're helping kind of actually build new stuff.
Okay. So everybody deploys it, or do you have a tiered process where they check it in and then somebody reviews it and somebody else deploys? Or?
Well, that's going to be based upon what our customers' requirements are.
Okay.
So we generally have what's called our reference deployment. So it's basically it's like Jenkins and SaltStack and GitHub and different type of environments. So you might have your dev, test, your QA, your staging, production, mm-hmm. and you kind of graduate code through those processes, mm-hmm. and different QA or automated test suites can actually get run against that. So that's kind of generally our concept for doing these type of things. But you might tell me rather than using GitHub, you prefer to use Team Foundation Server, which are Microsoft Shop. Or mm-hmm. we'll just kind of plug that out and plug this other one in. Or you're using Subversion rather than Git. We can actually.
Why would you do that?
Well, some people.
I guess if you got Subversion forever, it's better than switching.
Better than no source control at all, which is
that's true. Yeah, exactly. So okay, so you don't. It's not necessarily like one of these Y Combinator companies or something where in your first day you're deploying to production type of a thing. A little bit more conservative than that extreme.
Well, we do work with Y Combinators. So I mentioned some of these larger companies we're working with. We actually work with quite a few startups. Mm-hmm. Generally, they're funded because otherwise they can't really afford our services. Mm-hmm. But even a lot of these Y Combinator companies or any type of incubators, they would still benefit by slowing down a little bit. Mm-hmm. So by having to kind of work with us, and we kind of impose, I guess, some bit of order to their chaos, they learn how to do QA a little bit more and how to promote code and how to properly branch their code. And
so you're teaching Y Combinator companies the process and working with them? How many? Like half a dozen? A lot of them?
About half a dozen or so, but
that's
not all
like
Y Combinator. But yes.
Yeah, so you're in Ann Arbor and you've got Y Combinator startups, mm-hmm. and you're teaching them how to do DevOps.
Yep.
So that's pretty much, I don't know for those of you in the audience, but that's pretty much like the holy grail of shit. These guys must know what they're talking about.
And Cal Berkeley.
Usually, Y Combinator would be telling everybody else what to do, or somebody that was already in there. But
they're really good at solving their particular problem.
Right.
And that's kind of our value add for these guys. Like, you get some very expensive, talented developers. Yeah. They should be writing code, not figuring out how to do the plumbing.
Well, what's the mantra? If you don't do anything unless it's resulting in user growth, mm-hmm. right? So they should, really, they should. Everybody at Y Combinator should outsource the whole entire thing to you, if they were really following the mantra.
Mm-hmm. And we're a lot cheaper than hiring a full-time DevOps guy in the Bay Area.
Right, exactly. And how does something like that happen? I mean, how do you wind up in Ann Arbor, or just call it Southeast Michigan, and you're picking up Y Combinator startups? You were just walking along and somebody called one day?
That was actually...
Cuban gives you a ring, right?
Yeah. Rams got you on speed dial?
That was actually coming through a
Hacker
personal
News?
connection.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause I travel out there pretty extensively. You know, I mentioned we've got Cal Berkeley is one of our clients.
Oh, okay.
Intuit's based out of there. There's a few other ones too that are kind of smaller startups. And
Intuit's in San Jose?
they're in Mountain View.
Okay.
In San Diego and a few other places. It's just I'm working to build up my network there because there's a lot of business there and there's a lot of talent there as well.
Can you tell us what Y Combinator startups you work with?
Actually, I can't.
You can't? Okay.
No, unfortunately, I get it. I'm hoping that eventually I can talk about it, but we're under NDA. So.
Okay, cool. All right.
But that's an interesting proposition, right? So you're based here in southeastern Michigan, and there's a lot of benefits, right? Generally speaking, especially with all the universities in the area, right? So University of Michigan, Michigan State, and so forth, and cost of labor out on the West Coast, Silicon Valley, incredibly expensive. Do you find it challenging to get business out there, or do you find it like do you get a sense that there's a lot of really cool shit going on in Detroit because in this area, and there is. I mean, we talk about this all the time on our show. Just looking up and down Woodward, but it's the whole I-94 corridor as well. So I mean, do you get a lot of feedback from some of your clients, or just your interaction and your network out on the West Coast about Detroit? And how do you say, hey, you should think about us, even though we're not in the Valley?
That can be a challenging conversation. Generally, if I can have a conversation with them, though, they know we're the real deal. Especially if we get vetted and we're introduced from Amazon. Kind of pointing at us.
Yeah, and they can point to the Amazon site where you're part of the managed services, one of the 6.
Exactly.
That's a big selling point, I would imagine.
But yeah, there is definitely this perception, and I mentioned that I was previously employed at a microchip engineering company. This was back in 06, 07. They actually grew out of research at the University of Michigan, could not get funded, so they actually had to relocate out to Sunnyvale, California. So we had the engineering office here in Michigan, and the kind of sales and the administrative out that way. And then, I used to travel out there fairly frequently, and I travel there now for this job. And there is a bit of misconception that we're farmers, or or we're all working on the line at GM or something like that.
Just tightening bolts on the line somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that can be difficult to overcome. And I'm not really sure how to. But if they lend me their ear, and I can tell them what we've done for other people, and what kind of smart people I've got working at RedBrain. That's generally easy to overcome, but it's having the initial conversation can be challenging.
Yeah, it's like the personal relationships, right? And that's probably part of the method to your madness of being out there a lot, is you're building your network and kind of proving through personal contact, not just like, hey, we're in Ann Arbor, we're in southeastern Michigan, that there's actually some very highly qualified people here. By the way, you might want to consider moving here because the cost of living is a fraction of what it is out there.
Sure. Right. Yeah, and I kind of relate it back to the culture. So you look at Silicon Valley, that's only been around since the 60s or 70s. I mean, Detroit here, we've been building stuff for over 100 years.
The original Silicon Valley.
Right. I mean, we have a strong culture of makers, of creators. And I kind of see what we're doing is just we're repurposing that.
Right.
So I'm taking the same talent that may have been building cars a generation ago, yet we're building kind of the infrastructure that the internet or large websites run on. And that's just a cool story that I like to tell.
Yeah, does that resonate with people on the West
Coast? Here, it does, not so much on the West Coast.
Really?
But here, people...
That's a bummer.
Appreciate that. It is, but, I let our work speak for itself.
Right.
I mean, I really do,
So how long have you been this globally certified AWS?
Since February, I think.
And how'd you go about getting that? I mean, it's not like there's you don't really just buy a book. It's not like, you're global architecture certified for Microsoft, where there's this whole education path for that.
Yeah, and oddly enough, we were actually approached to do the official certification training guide for the certs, and we passed on it because we don't have the bandwidth to do it.
Right.
But that's just kind of cool stuff that we're being presented with. And when we actually blog about a particular product, Amazon, their product engineering teams will engage us on our blog and stuff like that. So we're doing some very cutting edge stuff here from Southeast Michigan. And part of this has been doing it for a while. Why was I one of the first 6 certified? Because I've been one of the first 6 that tried to do it.
Right.
And had made mistakes and learned how to get better. So when Amazon approached me and says, hey, we're trying to make a formalized program for this, which should be audited, could you please kind of help us define some of the criteria and show us how you're doing things?
Right.
So it's just, Personal relationships too. I mean, Amazon is just growing incredibly fast.
Mm-hmm.
They're not like a Microsoft who's had a partner program for 30 years, right? Where you've got a book and stuff like that.
Right.
It's all about who you know, and that's why I'm out in Seattle pretty frequently, just having lunch with people and meeting with them. It's just how business deals are done.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty soon you'll be like a partner with managed drone services. That's next, right?
Yeah.
You guys are already thinking about that, I'm sure.
Well, the drones I'll leave to somebody else to solve. I probably am working on the cloud stuff, but yeah, that's kind of one of our clients actually does do kind of some drone work, and you mentioned the whole big data kind of thing. They're ingesting a lot of data and sensor data, so that's a pretty interesting business as well. I was actually came back from Minneapolis 2 days ago, and on the flight back, I sat next to the guy who would be an investor in this company that does like drone maintenance. He says they're not betting on any particular industry to adopt maintenance or to adopt drones, but they're investing in this. It's basically hedging their bets. And I thought that's kind of interesting that there's actually companies out there that exist now that fix drones.
Right. The drone secondary market.
All three of them, right? But that's
drones.
But that's the opposite of the typewriter repair person, right? Mm-hmm. It's just they're kind of hedging for the future because that is going to happen. You watch some of that stuff, and it's pretty interesting stuff. And logistically and automation and all the things that Mike and I sometimes talk about. There's a lot of data, a lot of information, and therefore, a lot of need for services like what your company provides, because there's this much data now, and imagine, once you see thousands and hundreds of thousands of drones like that or whatever they look like, or automated vehicles or automated buses, or, there was just a thing on automated tractor trailers, which is going to happen. Imagine all the data that it's spellbinding.
You like big data.
Welcome to the future.
Big data.
Talk to Brad about big data.
No, talk to me about big data.
Things are going to get.
I think that phrase is it's either misused or misunderstood or both, right?
It is.
Yeah. I think it's also a nice word that people like to throw around too. What are the big data? What does that mean?
It means I'm seeking funding, right?
Is that what it does? Yeah.
Looking for investors, right?
Right.
Are enterprises using, speaking of big data or anything, are they using like NoSQL solutions now? Mm-hmm. Is Mongo an acceptable use for a Fortune 500 company now?
For sure. Depends on your data, though.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got relational data, relational database makes sense. If it's unrelational data, data that doesn't have keys amongst each other, then a document store or
mm-hmm.
flat file system would make more sense. It really depends on their data. So you look at, there's a lot of traditional applications that are using a SQL database like a Bitbucket, just
mm-hmm.
some short storage where they put big, huge blobs and stuff in there. Stuff like that doesn't belong in a database. So for a document type database where you're storing document JSON structures and stuff like
mm-hmm.
that, it makes more sense, and that's perfectly acceptable in the enterprise world.
Is it becoming a hybrid now, where you've got each individual application has some SQL data, some unstructured data?
Yeah, that's pretty popular.
Is that the new pattern?
For enterprises and for people who know what they're doing, yeah, that is.
Mm-hmm.
People who put structured data in Mongo, a lot of times you see like user accounts and stuff like that kind of go in there. But, my preference is actually kind of put that stuff in a more sanely designed schema,
mm-hmm.
in a SQL database, and then your unstructured data belongs in like a Mongo or a Redis or something like that.
But then again, if that's the way they want it, I guess that's what they get.
Right.
So, what percentage of the big, enterprise market is moving this way? And which percentage is like, this is not happening?
It's tiny. That's one of the exciting things about kind of business right now is that we're absolutely on fire as far as growth goes. The amount of opportunity in front of us is huge. I mean, it was single-digit percentage the number of enterprises that were actually in cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So the growth is huge. And kind of the whole pushback. I'm not really seeing that at a company level, but you will see individual IT departments who are afraid of change,
really?
Afraid of their jobs being outsourced.
Mm-hmm.
The cloud's taking things over. You will get some of that. The first thing that they love to do is point at the boogeyman of security.
Right.
Like if we can't see the boxes, they must be unsecure or insecure.
Which is probably the opposite.
For sure. I mean, I trust Amazon to run a data center better than 99%.
Exactly. I trust Amazon more than that,
It's a core competency of theirs.
Right, exactly. So maybe some people in the audience probably, explain how Amazon, built their infrastructure to sell books and now everything under the sun, and their service-oriented architecture, and how that winds up. How does Amazon wind up being the biggest supplier of cloud technology?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to, Amazon itself was a hyper-growth company for a long time. And they had a lot of disparate systems that interconnected, and it was just kind of a rat's nest of processes and systems. And kind of Jeff Bezos kind of mandated this solo approach. So every single business unit out there had to intercommunicate via these well-defined interfaces. You couldn't have like a backdoor connection into somebody else's database. They had to communicate via these RESTful web services. So that
means like, here, you work on this, and then you work on this, and you work on that, and you can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want here, and you can do whatever you want here, but they need to have an interface to each other. They need to be able to communicate with each other. So
and
that's the definition of how Amazon is set up.
Right.
And then they allow people now to utilize the infrastructure for that.
Right. So that was kind of laying the groundwork for that, and kind of the thinking about how you provision, computers and virtual machines is via this well-defined RESTful interface. Well, then the next leap to that was, hey, we need 100 times the capacity that we'd normally do to sell stuff during holiday shopping season. What do we do with the rest of the servers that we got laying around, February? They go underutilized. Somebody came up with the idea, well, why don't we lease them out to people? Why don't we let our customers actually use them and sell them per hour basis?
What ordinary people want to do.
So, and that's kind of how it grew up from there. And, Amazon just for the first time actually broke out their web services numbers. They're, I think, like a $7 billion a year company. They're just on fire growing it.
Right. And you get to architect your software and your enterprise architecture the same way that Amazon does it for cloud scale. So Amazon probably knows a thing or two about it.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that is that for the longest time, Amazon.com did not run on AWS. They actually had a bid for that business. AWS had a bid for Amazon.com and proved to that team that they could run that site efficiently. So I thought that was kind of an interesting example of kind of eating your own dog food.
Yeah, big time.
So we talked about earlier in the show about migrating companies from kind of the old world of data storage and so forth to the cloud. And we used kind of the analogy I like to use was the Dropbox. It's very easy for a person like one of us or Jeff to just sign up for Dropbox or Box using your email address. It's a huge task to migrate a company to the cloud. But from a security standpoint, that's a huge deal. That's a completely separate issue because companies are very concerned about security. So how do you guys think about that? And how do you guys put your customers at ease regarding security?
Sure. So generally, that's the first objection that I'll get when talking to a company. The first one to raise their hand, well, we can't because cloud's insecure. And I actually really love that conversation because it's a solved problem. Amazon and most of the other cloud providers kind of operate in what they call a shared security model. So your cloud provider is responsible for securing physical access. It's responsible for securing the network and kind of the hypervisor level kind of security for your particular instance. Everything above that, you're responsible for, or your managed service provider is responsible for. And the way that we address that is just by appropriately implementing the tools that Amazon gives us, and we kind of work for partners that actually enhances that offer. So that might be kind of your audit logging. So anytime anybody changes anything, it actually logs something in a bucket that's kind of read only, so that I can actually go back and audit it. Or their external IT auditors can audit it as well. It's things like very granular level access control. I might be able to only allow one business unit or even one particular developer to modify that particular server. So you can get very granular with your access controls. And I kind of say that your cloud gives you enough rope to hang yourself if you're not careful. But it has some very powerful tools for actually kind of securing it. And there are companies out there that also kind of enhance that. We're actually working with a company called Alert Logic and Amazon are both coming out here to Detroit, coming to the shelter at St. Andrews on May 21st, and we're actually hosting a cloud security event. You can actually talk through some of these things and hear how Alert Logic is solving some of these problems, and Amazon itself are going to be speaking about some of the challenges that they've encountered in helping companies secure their data as well.
Well, you get to be really cool now if you're doing cloud security at St. Andrews.
Yeah, that's kind of.
You guys must be like rock stars.
What's going on?
Yeah, we're actually going to be having it catered by a Coney Dog place and having the whole Fago and kind of we're doing the complete Detroit experience. So
well, there it is. That's it. When is that?
That is on May 21st.
May 21st at St. Andrews.
Yep, it's
should do that in like a really cool radio voice guy.
Yeah, and here's actually the website for it. Probably can't.
Oh, imagine that.
Can't really. It's because DevOpsSecurity.splashthat.com/RB. Uppercase RB.
Yeah, we'll put that in the bottom of the screen so we don't have to keep saying it because I don't know what you just said, but it'll be on the screen. See it? It's right down there right now.
So that was pretty magical. So where does that perception come if the cloud, and we were talking earlier about the cloud inherently is more safe than some other feature sets or products or whatever. Where does that perception come from, or how does that propagate? That it's not safe and they're concerned about safety if in fact the cloud is safer, generally speaking, than other types of storage services.
I think a large part of it has to do with the fact that you have to trust somebody else to do something for you. So I've got to trust Amazon to run a secure data center, which they do. They've got practically every single security certification under the sun. But a lot of people just have difficulty. Like, if I'm running a large data center company, I can actually physically visit the data center and see that the doors are locked and I've got an armed guard out front or whatever. When I'm going to trust Amazon to do that. And I don't have the opportunity to actually see that from my own eyes. That can be somewhat a difficult way to accommodate that.
Yeah, so it's like the security box that you can't go to the bank and open up and see, right? It's like one of those things where it's like Woody Allen once said, "I don't trust in the air that I can't see." But it's kind of that one of those things where it's like they can't really see it, so they don't know if it's safe, and so maybe that's where some of that perpetuates.
Right. I mean, I think a lot of it's analogous to after the Great Depression, nobody trusted the banks, so they'd take their money and stash it under the bed, so that way they can actually see that.
Right.
We've kind of grown past that where I trust, Fifth Third or whoever's got my money not to have it disappear someday. Or if it does disappear, they've got an audit trail to find it again.
Yep. Well, before we do, we should probably give some props to Grand Circus, the folks here at Grand Circus, who very kindly let us have our podcast here. And want to thank Jamie again for joining us on the podcast. It's been a great show. We appreciate you coming down here, and hopefully it's one of many more.
Cool. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Time to drink bourbon.
Exactly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Jeff? No? What? Beer?
You're drinking bourbon.
Maybe. An affirm maybe.